Hey, Warrior fans, this is Scott yet again for another edition of DUBS Playoff Watch. Thank you again for joining. And as you all know, I'm just an ordinary man, but an extraordinary fan. Now, on the last episode, which is actually prior to this weekend, sorry, had to take a couple of days off. This was starting to feel like a job again. But, I was extremely frustrated. I was aggravated. Um, but again, being the reasonable guy that I am, I had to ground myself. And, even though the Warriors beat the Rockets, their last game, and I got to tell you, that first half, it was very uncertain what the outcome of this game was going to be. And let's face it, if it wasn't for Curry going off in the third quarter and having his explosion, they may not have won that game. That would have been very, very close, to say the least. It was going to come down to the wire, and after the disastrous game with the Timberwolves, where they had given up, somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 offensive boards to them, it didn't get extremely better with the Rockets. They gave up 10 offensive boards to that team. So they're going to have to do a heck of a lot better now that they're going to be playing the Pelicans. And how long I've been talking to you about this? Ever since I started posting Dubs Playoff Watch, we were keeping an eye on the Pelicans. They were in the 11th spot. Warriors were in the 10th and the 9th and the 8th, tied for the 8th, fighting for those positions. Which has been constant since I started posting this. And, 2 weeks before I even started posting, when I was texting with my sons and my son-in-law, I was talking about keeping an eye on the Pelicans, because at that time they were only 3 games, then they were 4, and then they were 3 games back, and they've always just been right there. And, I was listening to a broadcast. No, actually, it may have been against the Mavs when the Warriors played the Mavs, and one of the broadcasters mentioned, "Oh, well, you don't have to worry about this. It's really all going to be decided in the last week." No, this stuff has been taking place for this last 12, 15 games. These have all been critical games. That's why the Warriors find themselves in this position, like I've been talking about for the last 2 weeks. If they are, unable to move up the ranks, if you will, in the Western Conference, put a string of wins together, even though they were extremely hot when we first started discussing this. But for the last week, they have obviously fallen off, even though obviously they won their last game. But they're 6-4 overall for the last 10 games, and when they were 70% winning percentage at 7-3 in their last 10, a week and a half to 2 weeks ago, they were one of the hottest teams in the NBA. But things have changed, and certainly with the last 3 games, they're 1-2, and again, if they wouldn't have had that explosive third quarter by Mr. Steph Curry, they could have lost that game as well. And again, they still gave up too many offensive boards. So all of these games have been critical, and what you don't want to do is wait for the last week of the season to decide if you're going to be in the playing game or not. And the Warriors aren't doing that. But those kind of comments, you don't know what's happening if you haven't really been following these standings like we have, right? And watching the Pelicans. They were just hanging around because we knew that they had 3 games head-to-head against the Warriors in the last little more than handful of games remaining in the season. So it all comes down to this. This is the first game against the Pelicans, and those guys are going to be hitting the boards. If they think there were difficulties with the Rockets and the Timberwolves and keeping them off the boards, what do you think it's going to be like against the Pelicans? So let's talk about the standings real quick. Let's see where we're at after this weekend and leading up to today's game. So as you can see, the Mavericks, the Trail Blazers, and the Lakers are now all tied. The major difference is that the Blazers, they have won 4 in a row. They are streaking right now, and they look good. 5-5 over the last 10 games, but over the last 5, they're 4-1. So they are on a roll. The Mavericks are 6-4 over the last 10. They've been pretty much just like that, just above 500. Obviously, they lost their last game. The most worrisome team, if you are a fan of theirs, would be the Lakers, who even after AD's return and LeBron's return the last couple of games, there is a lot of rust, and they have lost 3 in a row. Now, I believe they have 8 remaining, if I'm not mistaken. So, obviously, if they continue this trend, they are at risk of falling completely out, seeing how the 10th place Spurs are just 4.5 games back. Now, the Spurs, it would require that they win at least half, maintain their 500 winning percentage over the last 10, and the Warriors the same, by the way. Not much difference there, just that half game lead to be able to overtake the Lakers, if you will, or the Lakers fall back. But let's be serious. Lakers aren't going to lose the remaining games, at least not all of them. But they are struggling right now. But for all you Laker fans out there, this may be a vote of confidence for you.
Lakers are in.
Well, is it possible the Lakers could lose the majority of the games? I mean, how do you feel about that?
Lakers are in.
I get it. All right, I get it. And again, I'm a reasonable guy. I'm realistic. However, looking at how horribly they played lately and looking at the losing streak they're on, there's only 8 games left. I mean, is it possible that they lose their remaining games and the Spurs and or the Warriors at least achieve, a 50, 60% winning percentage, and at that point, all they got to do is win 4, Lakers lose all theirs, and all of a sudden, they jump ahead of the Lakers. They both could jump ahead of the Lakers, and the Lakers would be out. Or assuming the Pelicans aren't in there somewhere. What about that?
Lakers are in.
Well, there you have it. Laker fans, Warrior fans, Western Conference fans. Just trying to have a little fun. So, all right. Again, we can't take this stuff too seriously. It is, after all, just a game. And there's many more important things going on in life. But not when the Warriors' playoff chances are at stake. So let's continue with the standings. Left off, obviously, talking about the Lakers. We talked about the Mavs, the Trailblazers, the Lakers. Now, the Grizzlies. The Warriors just half a game behind the Grizzlies. And the Warriors are half a game ahead of the Spurs. By the way, the Spurs, as you can see, they have lost 3 in a row, but they have all been tight games at the end. They played some tough teams, and it has come down to the last possession or two. They could have easily won those games. And they have played some of the best teams in the league and fought them all the way to the end. So I still say the Spurs are for real, and let's not take them lightly at this point. Even though, because of those last 3 tough losses for them and for you Spurs fans, they're a 500 team right now too because of those. But again, that could have easily gone the other way. Easily. So Where does that leave us? Well, for tonight and or today, if you will, as we started out talking about tonight's game, the Warriors and the Pelicans at 4:30. Now the Blazers, they're playing the Hawks, but again, the Blazers are on a roll. The Hawks are a tough team. Now they play at 5. Here's a real positive outlook for the Warriors. Knicks and the Grizzlies. So the Knicks, who have been on a roll, I think they're at a 90% clip still, if I'm not mistaken, in the last 10 games. And they're either in 4th or 5th place in the Eastern Conference. So they have really turned things around this season and are even turning it on more at the end. They are a tough out against anybody. So hopefully they can continue that pace and take care of the Grizzlies this evening, which again, Pacific time will start at 6. And if the Warriors could win, the Warriors would take over that Grizzlies spot, which is 8th right now, and then push the Pelicans back, which is where we need them. And let's see, Spurs play the Jazz. Another tough game for the Spurs. They've got to go up and meet the Jazz. The Jazz they're still playing for first place because of what Phoenix did the other night. And what Phoenix has been doing the last handful of games. So, and I should say all season long, obviously, because they have one of the best records in the league. Amazing turnaround. So hopefully the Jazz can take care of business and beat the Spurs. And if that's the case, and the Warriors win, push Spurs a full game back behind the Warriors. And let's see, we were just talking about the Lakers. They got to play the Nuggets. Tough game for the Lakers again. So this will all be very, very interesting. And by the way, the Warriors, that's a back-to-back. So in New Orleans. So not only are they playing the Pelicans tonight, they'll play them again tomorrow. So let's hope for the best. Let's hope for the best. You know, I was just talking about how close and how tough the last few games were for the Spurs, and how tough they played to the very end, and that actually goes both ways for some of the games. I thought it was interesting to put that up so all of you could take a look at that. And the only reason I'm providing a little bit more focus on this is because even though they're falling a half game behind the Warriors, like, we can't count them out at all. They are for real, and they, in the last few games, have played some of the toughest teams in the league, as I had previously mentioned. Let's take a look. Even if you go back to April the 24th, when they played the Pelicans, that was one of those last possession games. They were able to pull that one out, 110 to 108. That's what I'm saying. The Pelicans they're going after it at the end of the season. So they are going to do everything they can tonight. You can bet on it. But then you look at the Spurs next game on the 26th, April the 26th. They barely escaped beating the Wizards 146 to 143. Then they lost a tough one to the Heat. Even though the Heat, from a standings perspective, has fallen back in the Eastern Conference. I mean, they're at roughly 500 ball also, but they still have one of the best teams in the league, without a doubt. And it is, and again, that was a loss 116 to 111. Again, that came down to the last couple of possessions. Then the Spurs lost to the Celtics, 143 to 140. That was a last possession game, and Tatum has been going off for the Celtics, with the exception of the last game, where it looks like he may have suffered, hopefully it's just a minor injury and it's not going to keep him out, because he has been awesome lately. And then the Spurs, again, last possession game, lost to the 76ers, of course, one of the best teams in the NBA. going back and forth for that first spot. In the East with the Brooklyn Nets, 113 to 111. So playing the Jazz tonight, I think the Spurs are going to do exactly what they've done in these last handful of games. It's, if the Jazz are playing at their best and the Spurs are playing at their best, the Spurs are going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the Jazz to take them out, and it's going to come down to a last possession game. At least that's my prediction. But anyway, worth noting, the Warriors aren't necessarily out of the water because they're half a game ahead, is my only point. Yeah, if you look at the Warriors' last 3 games, I believe they were behind the Mavericks by 40 at one point. They ended up losing 133 to 103. And against the Timberwolves, again, getting destroyed on the offensive glass. They lost 126 to 114. But the game was, even though they were within reach, Timberwolves basically owned that game for all 4 quarters. And against the Rockets, the Warriors handled it. Obviously, Steph and Draymond sat out the 4th quarter, were able to do that. So the bench continued to play and maintain momentum that had started in that 3rd quarter, because once again that first half started to look like the prior 2 games, even though Steph did not play well in the first half, but the other members of the team contributed such that they were able to stay close to the Rockets by the end of the first half. So kudos to those guys. But let's hear from Kerr, even though this was a couple of days ago. Let's hear from Coach Kerr on what he has to say about that Rockets game.
I don't know. Steph is Steph. I've seen him do this a lot where he's struggling and he can't make anything, and all it takes is one. So he made the one in the corner where he celebrated and started jumping up and down. I think he was mocking himself, and I think that seemed to get him going. But it's really one of the most remarkable things about Steph is that he can be in the midst of what looks like his worst game of the entire season and then just explode. He's got the ultimate confidence, and it's pretty amazing to watch, because most human beings wouldn't be able to dig themselves out of a hole like that.
Steve, what did you get from Draymond tonight?
Go ahead, man. Draymond was brilliant tonight, as he has been all year.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt Coach Kerr there at the press conference, but I did want to put what I think is a special highlight on to see and to show and display the excellence and the execution of the Warriors' motion offense, and in particular, Steph moving the entire time, and Draymond's patience with how he facilitates the offense, and not just the patience, but the precision in the passing, and then a extremely major pick by Looney to set this whole thing up for Steph in the corner. Anyway, I thought it was an excellent depiction of who the Warriors are and how their offense operates. And this is obviously a snapshot of what happens when they execute things properly. So you can see how Draymond quickly pushes the ball up the floor, sets a pick, Bazemore brings it over, Steph cuts through, kicks it back out, and Looney sets that devastating pick to leave Steph wide open for a perfect pass from Draymond. That offense is spectacular. I want to take a couple minutes here to show highlights of the other contributions as well. As there's a lot of focus on Steph from around the nation, and I hate being one of those guys, but the way they've been playing lately, the primary driver behind them winning, and I know that they all would say that. However, when the other guys are playing consistently and they're obviously providing positive contributions. And I'm not talking about Draymond because he's been consistent all year. He's Draymond every year when it comes to rebounds, assists, facilitating offense, defense, taking charges, everything. So you see him in these highlights and everything, the myriad of things that he does game to game. And you'll see contributions. Obviously, Wiggins has been consistent. We'll see a little Bazemore. We'll see a little Poole. And it's a nice segue. Let's just go into it. So here you see Bazemore on a break, draws the traffic and dishes it to Wiggins for a dunk. And here Steph is dishing it to Wiggins, who is cutting through the lane for an easy lay-in. And Steph, out of a double team, gives it to Looney at the high post, with Draymond cutting into the lane for a dunk. And here's Draymond drawing an offensive foul, which he is one of the best in the league when it comes to defensive positioning. And here is a pass to Poole, who missed it, but Bazemore just getting his hand on it, kicking it back out, and Wiggins was able to go into traffic and lay it in. So beautiful hustle by Bazemore that set that up. And there was another pick by Looney with an assist as Poole was coming off of that and was able to put up a running one-hander. And this play right here is a kick out to Mulder, who was just, because they had the court spread, they were able to finish that successfully. And I wanted to take just one more look at that because you can see Juan Toscano-Anderson cutting up, getting the ball, and then cutting through the lane to kick it out to Mulder for that shot. So there's all the positive things the Warriors do on a regular basis, every game. Contributions from everywhere. Everybody knows what their role is and executes well, the majority of the time. But obviously, when they are getting beat by a bit, that is because, in cases of all teams, that there's poor execution. Sometimes it is the competitive level is not where it needs to be to play defense, box out, get the boards, win those 50-50 balls when they should. Now, I'm going to leave you with this one thing. This is the one thing that aggravated me the most in the Warriors' last game. So let's take a look at this. So let's take a look at this play. You see right there where Jordan Poole is batting the ball up, trying to recover as he was cutting from a bad pass acknowledged by Juan Toscano-Anderson from out of the corner. And so it was a 50-50 ball, but there was 50-50 effort. There was a heck of an effort to try and bat that ball up and get it back, but once he lost it, you can see it even in slow-mo. He's hanging back there at half court. So my only point in showing that play is that for the Warriors to win with 8 guys, which, by the way, Oubre, turns out, tore a ligament in his wrist, his left wrist, and evidently has a fracture in the palm of his hand. So if he tries to play, obviously that's going to be very questionable. It's likely that he may miss the rest of the season. And like if he has surgery, and he's going to miss the playoffs too, assuming that the Warriors get in. But they need 100% effort all the time. For that play to have properly been completed, when you lose possession, even after going after it, like, why didn't Jordan Poole hustle to get back on defense and at least try to stop him from scoring? Just because they won the tip and got the ball back, he just gave up on the play. So Warriors can't afford to do that. They, from an offensive perspective, they need lots of contributions, or Steph needs to go off. Defensive contributions, everybody has got to play hard all the time. They are outmanned from a health perspective in terms of number and quantity of players that they have available to them. But, a real test, another test, a true test is going to be tonight against the Pelicans, which starts in an hour and a half. So I'm going to end it here. And as always, it has been a pleasure being here and going over this with you. Hopefully you enjoyed it. the handful of you. But regardless, I enjoy doing it. So thank you for being with me for another edition of Dubs Playoff Watch. And let's go Warriors. Let's do it tonight. Everybody, take care. Stay healthy.